to start week 3, right? And we're going to continue with research methods. So remember, I actually have these two open right now. There's a week missing because I have it turned off, but I have this one turned on so I can show you in the video that this week we're going to focus on psychological research, and I'm going to do kind of an overview for you today. And then you'll see one day you're going to do an overview concept map. One day you're going to focus just on descriptive research methods. You're going to get to do an observation, and I'm going to go over each of these assignments individually. There's a little discussion on how surveys are worded, and at the very end of the week you'll try to collect very simple data just so you can practice running a correlation. So this is what you'll see. I'm going to take it over to my page so that I can click on everything. So let's look here at this overview, and I have an extra video here in case you're confused. Your resources are here. There's one extra optional kind of funny video, and this flow chart here is kind of where I want you to start. All right, you can have this up, you can print this, you can write it on a piece of paper, but your first goal is to kind of understand how all of this goes together. So as you use the first set of resources, you're going to say, okay, what is all of this about? And you can, like I said, print this page or put it on in your notebook and just kind of take notes as you walk through. All right, and you're going to see that we always start by being curious, right? We have some sort of question, right? That we have a question here, and that we are going to then describe what we see, right? And we might do this with, you're going to learn how to do an observation this week. How do you maybe take a survey? So you ask some people some questions. And a case study would be, you look at somebody who's different in some way. You're going to see some really cool case studies this week. And this descriptive research helps you make a hypothesis, makes a guess, right? Kind of an informed guess about your question. And then you're going to need to make something, you're going to have to define it better. This word operational sounds so big, but it just means that you're going to make your hypothesis be in a way that two people could make sure they measure the same thing. And this is really important because we're talking about words like anxiety, depression, happiness, joy, right? These words, if you might define it completely differently than I define it. So it can't just be a feeling. We have to have some way of measuring it. So operational is creating a measurable definition of what we're interested about. And then we can conduct this more research in two basic ways. We can do what's called correlational research, or we can have a true experiment. And you're going to see this week that one is focusing on relationships or predictions, and the other is trying to establish cause and effect relationships. And this kind of goes around because if we have an experiment that doesn't support our hypothesis, then we got to start back over. If we have something that does support, then we start to maybe create a theory to help predict and explain the world, right? And often it goes back, right? Because we need things to be replicable. So you're going to start with this concept map, and you're going to use these. There's some of your textbook. There's a little crash course. There's the research method, strengths and weaknesses. There's also a quick PowerPoint that kind of helps you get the big idea, right? The focus of this first one is to see how all research fits together. So you'll spend a day on that. And then the next one is just going to be focusing. You're going to focus further on just descriptive, right? And so you're going to need to create your own concept map for this, but there's a little bit of extra information. This might not take very long because maybe I got a pretty good idea what a case study is, right? I know the strengths and weaknesses of a case study. I'm pretty good. So oftentimes these two things go together. There's just a little bit maybe you add just in this little area for that second day. It usually goes very, very fast. All right, then you're going to focus on, you're going to get to do an observation, right? So you're going to conduct an observation. So it is your turn. I want you to be a fly on a wall, right? What we want to do, if a teacher, when I was a school psychologist, if a teacher came to me with a problem, right, then I would just go watch, right? And so you have here, I have these as two, there's the same thing, one is a PDF and one is on my Mac, right? And so here's what you should have, right? You want to have a question. You want to start with, what are you looking to answer? Oftentimes I found that making this be about men or women is kind of easy. There's been lots of things going on recently that make this maybe more difficult, but any question that you want to answer that you could possibly answer by watching. And just think about what's going on. Like even during COVID, when people were locked in their house, people would ask a question about who's more likely to smile when walking down the street, a man or a woman, and they just looked out their window. I've had funny ones like, who's more likely to eat French fries first at a fast food place, men or women? And they go sit and watch, right? And then you're gonna plan. So this is like the planning part. How are you gonna conduct this observation, right? Where are you gonna go? What are your methods, right? What are you gonna write down? Are you writing down what you see exactly? What differences are you looking for? And what I'm trying to say here is you want to be careful that you're writing down exactly what you see with no judgment, right? So Billy hit Alice. That's no judgment. That's just a behavioral observation. Billy was mean to Alice. That's an evaluation. We don't want to make evaluations. We want to practice writing down exactly what we're going to see. So what are you going to write down? And then do your observation and write it down. And then how are you going to summarize it? What ways could you create a table to compare the two things you were looking at? And finally, what sort of conclusions could you make, right? And I put some sample questions here. If you get stuck on it, just let me know and I'll help you. So that's your observation for the week. All right, I don't want you to observe for too long. 20 minutes is more than enough. All right, an hour total, you should be able to finish this assignment. Next one is discussion. All right, so here's a little Google survey. You're going to go take the survey, and then you're going to make one posting about the words that you think influence people, right? And you're going to kind of write, how do the words in the surveys lead people to answer the questions in a certain way? This one should be fairly quick. I would say this should take you 20 to 30 minutes tops, not a long time. Probably the longest assignment for this week is to do this survey to make a correlation, all right? And don't worry, you don't have to do the mathematics in a difficult way. So first, read through correlational research, read through this PowerPoint. And second is the assignment is here, all right? So you wanna have two variables and how you're gonna measure them. So what two things are you curious to whether they're correlated? Right? And these are going to be something they have to be something you can ask people. So you could ask people online, you could ask your family, you could ask the other students in the class, right? What questions are you going to ask them? So how are you going to ask them? And then the data, ideally 20. If you can't get 20, 10 will be okay. All right. I find the directions for how to run this on Excel are here. I find that to be pretty difficult, but this website is very fast. You enter one variable here, one variable here, and calculate R, and it's going to make it very quick for you to run your correlation. All right, so that I like that option better than using Excel. All right, then we have, depending on your value of R, you have a weak correlation, a moderate, a strong, a very strong. And then there's some questions here to answer. All right, so you're going to send me a file with your variables, your question, your data. I like 15 to 20 is best, but if you get down to 10, we'll survive. The correlation coefficient and your answers to the questions. Okay, and again, I know this says, I told you sometimes you're going to see AP Psychology. If there's an assignment that I find works for both, I don't necessarily remake the document and take one word off. So it's for you. And I hope this assignment might take you, because you have to collect data, you might have to get your questions out and wait a little bit and come back to it. All right, so that brings us to everything you have for course week 3. If you get stuck on anything, always remember you can ask me questions. Thank you for your time. Have a great week.